The wind swept through the stone courtyard of Aldervale, carrying the scent of pine and cold earth. Beneath the rising moon, young wolves stood in a circle, their eyes gleaming with silver light as the choosing ceremony began. The air was heavy with hope and fear. Every she-wolf prayed to be blessed with her fated mate tonight. Lyra stood among them, her hands trembling as she tried to steady her breathing. The white gown clung to her, whispering against her skin like frost. Around her, whispers rose. "She shouldn't even be here," one girl murmured, her tone dripping with scorn. "The daughter of a traitor has no right to stand before the moon." Lyra's chest tightened, but she kept her eyes fixed on the sky. Her father's name had been cursed for years, his rebellion against the former Alpha forever staining her bloodline. Still, she had come. Tonight, maybe the moon would see past her lineage and grant her a bond, a chance at belonging. The elders stood at the center, cloaked in black fur and ancient symbols carved into their staffs. Elder Marek raised his voice, deep and commanding. "Let the moon decide who among you is worthy." One by one the girls stepped forward. A shimmer of silver light would descend, and their chosen mates' names would echo softly through the air. A divine whisper only the moon could give. Laughter and tears followed as the pairs formed. When it was Lyra's turn, silence fell. She walked forward, every step echoing like a heartbeat. Her knees nearly buckled under the weight of so many eyes. She lifted her gaze toward the full moon, radiant and perfect above her. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "See me." The light did not come. Seconds stretched into minutes. The elders shifted uneasily. The other wolves began to murmur. The moon remained silent. A cold voice broke through the stillness. "The moon has spoken." Elder Marek's tone carried a cruel finality. "Lyra of no pack, daughter of the fallen warrior, is unworthy of mating." A wave of gasps rippled through the courtyard. Lyra's face burned with shame. "No," she whispered. "That can't be. There must be a mistake." The elder's gaze hardened. "The moon does not make mistakes." Her heart pounded in her chest as laughter echoed around her. A few girls turned their backs, others stared with open pity. Lyra stood frozen, her throat tight, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. Unworthy. The word sank deep, heavier than any blade. She fled the circle, her bare feet striking the cold stone path. Behind her, the laughter and whispers blurred into the night wind. She ran until the torches faded, until only the forest surrounded her. The trees whispered as if alive, their branches stretching like fingers toward the sky. The moonlight followed her, pale and distant. She fell to her knees by the riverbank, her reflection trembling in the water. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why won't you see me?" No answer came. Only the soft ripple of water and the mournful cry of an owl in the distance. Her wolf stirred weakly inside her, wounded by rejection. It had never felt so small, so silent. Lyra pressed a hand to her chest. "If I am unworthy," she whispered, "then I will make myself worthy. You will see me one day, moon. Even if I have to tear the sky apart." She rose, her gown now streaked with mud and moonlight. The humiliation still burned, but beneath it flickered something fierce. Defiance. In the distance, the castled towers of Aldervale gleamed under the moon. Somewhere within those walls, the Alpha King would soon return from war, his fate yet unwritten. Lyra did not know that her own destiny was already entangled with his, and before we see what fate the moon holds for Lyra, make sure to subscribe. Her story is only beginning. The castle bells tolled across Aldervale, their echoes rolling through the misty morning like thunder. Word spread swiftly through the kingdom. The Alpha King, Cale Thornvale, had returned from the northern wars. After years of bloodshed and conquest, the realm would finally see its ruler again. In the lower courtyard, servants rushed through the cold dawn, carrying bundles of silk and trays of silver. Among them moved Lyra, her hands red from scrubbing floors and polishing armor that would never be hers to wear. Since the choosing ceremony, whispers had followed her wherever she went. Unworthy, moonless, cursed. The words clung to her like a second skin. She kept her head down, but her thoughts burned. "If they will not see me as one of them," she murmured under her breath, "I will make them see me for what I can become." From the great hall above, a horn sounded. Lyra straightened instinctively. The king's procession had reached the gates. Even from afar, the rhythm of hooves could be felt through the stone. Slow, heavy, commanding. "Move, girl," snapped the steward, shoving a tray into her hands. "You'll serve in the main hall." Do not speak. Do not look him in the eye. Lyra nodded, though curiosity burned hotter than fear. She had heard tales of Cale Thornvale, the war-born alpha whose wolf could tear through armies, whose roar made the sky tremble, but tales were often kinder than truth. As she stepped into the grand hall, the scent of smoke and pine filled the air. Banners bearing the silver wolf of Aldervale hung from the ceiling, and the nobles gathered like predators dressed in silk. Lyra moved among them silently, placing goblets of mead on the tables as murmurs rippled through the room. The great doors opened. Every voice fell silent. Kyle entered. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, his dark hair damp from the rain. A long scar crossed his temple, a mark of the war that had made him king. His eyes, piercing gold, swept over the room like firelight. Power followed him, thick and unyielding, the kind that made lesser wolves bow without command. Lyra froze mid-step, her breath caught in her throat. For a heartbeat, she could swear those golden eyes brushed over her. But then he looked away, striding to the dais where the council awaited him. Elder Marek bowed low. "Welcome home, my king. Aldervale stands whole once more under your name." Cale's voice was low, edged with authority. "Does it?" he asked. "Because the scent I return to is one of fear." The hall stiffened. Lyra lowered her gaze, her heart pounding. He continued, "I've heard rumors of division, of faith lost in the moon's will. I will have peace restored before the next moonrise." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Marek cleared his throat. "There was an unfortunate event at the last choosing. A girl stood before the moon and received no call. We deemed her unworthy." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "Unworthy?" "A defect of blood," Marek said quickly. "A disgrace to the ceremony. The moon rejected her, and we followed her judgment." Kyle's gaze turned toward the servants. Lyra felt it before she saw it, the sharp pull in her chest, the strange heat rising beneath her skin. His wolf, though restrained, stirred. The air thickened, charged with something primal and ancient. She dropped her eyes to the floor, gripping the tray tightly to hide her trembling hands. The bond she had longed for, the one she had begged the moon for, seemed to hum faintly, impossibly between them. But Kyle said nothing. With one final glance, he turned away. "Summon the Council of Elders," he commanded. "If the moon rejects one of our own, I intend to know why." Lyra's pulse quickened. Somewhere deep inside her, her wolf stirred once more, weak but alive. The wind outside howled, as if the mountain itself had heard his words and approved. The council chamber was colder than the mountains outside. Stone walls swallowed every sound, and the scent of burning sage clung to the air, a ritual meant to cleanse deceit. Lyra stood near the entrance, her hands clasped tightly, heart beating fast enough to echo in her ears. She hadn't been summoned to this hall since the night of her rejection, yet now the elders had called for her again. Elder Marek sat at the center of the long table, his silver hair gleaming under the torchlight. His expression was carved from ice. Around him, 5 other elders watched silently, their gazes sharp and judging. Cale Thornvale, the Alpha King, stood among them. He was not seated, nor at ease. His presence filled the chamber like a storm barely contained. The gold in his eyes flickered faintly, betraying the beast beneath the skin. "Lyra of no pack," Elder Marek began, his voice heavy with disdain. "You were called here so that your matter may be closed. The moon has spoken. You are unworthy of mating. Yet your existence continues to disrupt the harmony of the pack." Lyra swallowed, her voice steady but quiet. "I have caused no harm. I serve in the castle as commanded." Marek's lips curled. "Even a shadow can poison a room. Whispers follow you. Pity clings to you. And now the king himself takes interest in your name. Tell me, girl, why should you not be cast out entirely?" Before Lyra could speak, Kyle's voice cut through the tension. "Enough." The single word silenced the hall. Every elder turned to him, uneasy beneath the weight of his authority. Kyle stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Marek. "You question her worth as though the moon's will is your own to interpret. But I have seen too many wolves die believing they could read the heavens." Marek straightened. "With respect, my king, it is our duty to protect the sanctity of the pack. If the moon denied her a bond, then she—" Kyle's eyes flashed gold. "Then she what? Is she to be condemned for being different?" Lyra's breath caught. His tone was sharp, protective even, though she dared not believe it could mean anything more. "She bears no mark of the moon," Another elder interjected. Her wolf is weak. She has no scent of destiny, no power, no... A low growl rose from Kyle's chest, deep and warning. The room trembled with it. The elders fell silent. Kyle turned toward Lyra, studying her as though seeing her for the first time. Something stirred between them, faint but undeniable. His wolf surged against his control, and for a heartbeat, his eyes blazed fully gold. Lyra felt it too. A pull, fierce and raw, like a thread of heat winding through her blood. Her wolf stirred inside her, whimpering, uncertain but awakening. Kyle blinked, forcing his wolf back, his jaw clenched. The chamber filled with whispers. "What is this?" Marek hissed. "She dares to defy the moon even here." Lyra shook her head quickly, terrified. I don't know what's happening." Kyle's voice dropped low, dangerous. "Silence, Elder. You will not speak another word against her." The torches flickered as though the air itself obeyed his command. Marek rose, trembling with rage. "You cannot defend her, my king. You risk the wrath of the moon herself." Kyle's expression hardened. "If the moon wishes to punish me for seeing truth where others see shame, then let her strike me now." Silence fell. The flames steadied. No divine sign appeared. Lyra stared at him, her heart caught between awe and confusion. Why would a king defend her, the unworthy one? Kyle turned away from the elders, his voice final. "The matter is not closed. I will decide her fate myself." He left without another word. The heavy doors shut behind him, leaving only the echo of his defiance and the trembling certainty in Lyra's chest that her life would never be the same again. The next dawn broke beneath a restless sky. Clouds gathered low over Aldervale, heavy with the promise of rain. Inside the great hall, the Council of Elders convened once more, their voices rising in sharp disagreement. The news of the previous night had already spread through every corridor. The Alpha King had defied them for the sake of a moonless girl. Kyle stood at the center of the room, the golden emblem of the crown glinting faintly at his chest. His patience had worn thin. "You summoned me," he said, his tone cold. "Speak your accusations plainly." Elder Marek rose, gripping his staff so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Your Majesty, your defense of that servant girl undermines the order of the pack. The moon rejected her before all of Aldervale. To stand against that judgment is blasphemy." Kyle's expression did not waver. "Blasphemy," he repeated softly. "Or blindness." A murmur rippled through the hall. Lyra was brought forward under the watch of 2 guards, her wrists bound only by custom, not by need. She looked fragile, her head bowed, yet her presence filled the space like quiet fire. Marek sneered. "You dare bring her before this council again?" "I brought her," Kale said, stepping closer, "because the moon does not err. And yet you, who claim to speak for her, call her unworthy. Tell me, Elder, when did men begin deciding the worth of what the moon creates?" Lyra's breath caught. She could feel the tension coiling through every corner of the chamber, the disbelief in every stare. Kale's wolf prowled behind his gaze, restless, drawn to her. Marek's voice shook with fury. "You would claim her? A girl with no bond? No mark? No light in her blood?" Kale's eyes flared gold. "You see no light because you are blind to it." Gasps filled the room. He turned to Lyra, his voice dropping low, meant only for her, though the whole council heard. "Do you trust me?" Lyra hesitated, her pulse racing. "I don't know what to trust anymore." He took one step closer. "Then trust what you feel." The moment stretched, silent and electric. The gold in his eyes deepened until it mirrored the moon's glow. Lyra's wolf stirred within her, timid at first, then roaring awake. The air shimmered between them, an ancient force older than any law. Elder Marek's voice broke through, frantic. "Stop this madness. The moon has not sanctioned—" Kyle ignored him. His voice rang clear, echoing through the chamber. "The moon has chosen. You may deny her voice, but I will not." Before anyone could intervene, Kyle reached out and pressed his hand to Lyra's neck, just above her collarbone, the place where a mate's mark would burn. Power surged through them, visible as a flicker of light. Lyra gasped, her knees weakening as warmth spread through her chest, flooding her with both pain and wonder. The hall erupted. Elders shouted, some in outrage, others in fear. Marek stumbled back, his face pale. "You fool!" he hissed. "You have doomed us all!" Kyle's voice thundered. "The only doom is your pride." But even as he spoke, the mark beneath his hand burned bright, then dimmed to an angry red. The connection flared violently, then faltered. Cale's body shuddered as pain lanced through him, his wolf recoiling from something unseen. Lyra reached for him, instinct overriding fear. "Cale!" He steadied himself, jaw clenched, eyes fierce despite the agony. "It's not the moon rejecting us," he said through gritted teeth. "It's the corruption of those who've twisted her will." The light faded, leaving only the echo of power in the air. Lyra's skin still tingled where his hand had been, and though the mark had not sealed, something unbreakable now tied them together. Kyle turned back to the council, breathing hard. "She is mine," he declared. "By the moon's law or by my own." The chamber fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains as if the heavens themselves bore witness to his claim. The mark had not sealed. Kyle's claim, though bold and undeniable, had left the entire kingdom trembling. In the hours that followed the confrontation in the council chamber, silence gripped Aldervale like a frost. No bells rang, no howls carried through the night. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Lyra sat alone in a healer's chamber beneath the castle. The walls were lined with ancient herbs and wolf-bone carvings meant to protect the soul. Her fingers hovered over her collarbone where the heat of Cale's touch still lingered. She had not been branded with the mate's mark, yet something had changed. Her senses felt sharper. The pull between her and the king, though disrupted, hadn't vanished. Footsteps approached. The door creaked open, revealing Queen Mother Era, cloaked in midnight blue. Her presence carried the same authority as Cale's, though veiled in silence and wisdom. "You defied the moon's will," Era said softly, her eyes unreadable. Lyra stood quickly. "I didn't ask for this. I never wanted to challenge the gods. Yet you stand here touched by the Alpha King, bound to him in a way no one understands." She studied Lyra. "You felt it too, haven't you? The bond trying to form, and something ancient resisting it." Lyra nodded slowly. It wasn't rejection, it was pain, like something was pushing back from within. Era moved to the window. Outside, dark clouds rolled over the mountains. The mate mark is sacred. When it fails, it's not the moon saying no, it's a warning. Something in your blood is fighting the bond, something powerful. Lyra's breath caught. "Then why did the moon show me to him at all?" Era turned, eyes narrowing. "That is the question the elders fear. And what they fear, they will try to erase." A chill ran down Lyra's spine. "Erase? You've humiliated them by surviving, by being seen. Now they will find another way to remove you." A knock interrupted them. Kyle entered without waiting for permission, his presence filling the room like fire after ice. He looked worn, his shoulders tense, his jaw set in a grim line. "Leave us," he told Ira. She hesitated, then gave Lyra one last look. "Trust your instincts. They're louder than the lies." She left without a sound. Kyle walked to her slowly, his golden eyes less fierce now, more focused. "How do you feel?" "Different," Lyra admitted. "I can't explain it. It's like part of me woke up, but I don't know what it is." He nodded. "When I touched you, my wolf surged forward so fast I could barely hold him. And then he recoiled. Not from you, from something inside you. You think I'm cursed?" "No." His voice was quiet, but sure. "I think your bloodline is hidden, protected, and now that protection is fading." She looked at him. "Why claim me, Kyle? If you knew the risks, the wrath of the elders, the threat to your crown, why risk it?" His gaze didn't waver. "Because the moment I saw you, my wolf knew, and I've never known him to be wrong." She looked away, heart pounding. "But the mark will come in time, if it's truly ours to bear." He paused, voice lower. "But you must be ready for what the truth may cost. The elders will not rest. And if there's a secret in your blood, they will try to rip it out." Lyra's hands curled into fists. "Let them try." Kyle smiled, faint but real. "That's why I claimed you." Lightning flashed in the distance, casting shadows across the walls. The storm had not yet broken, but it was coming. Lyra felt it in her bones and in the slow, steady rise of power within her that she still didn't understand. The old library beneath the east wing of the castle was rarely visited. Dust cloaked the stone shelves, and cobwebs hung like forgotten curtains. Lyra slipped through the narrow corridor, her footsteps quiet as whispers. The Queen Mother had told her there were answers buried here, fragments of truth long hidden by the elders. She lit a small lantern, the flame casting trembling shadows across worn tomes and sealed scrolls. Her fingers brushed the spines, seeking something she could not name until one book seemed to call to her. The leather binding was cracked with age, but the emblem on its cover, a crescent moon encircling a wolf's eye, glowed faintly in the light. Lyra opened it. Inside, a name written in faded ink froze her breath. Celine Blackthorne. Her mother. She sank to the ground, hands trembling as she turned the pages. What began as a simple diary slowly shifted into something else, a record of exile, bloodlines, and betrayal. Celine had once belonged to a royal bloodline known as the First Wolves, the oldest children of the moon. But they had been cast out after refusing to support the Elders' rise to power generations ago. They called us traitors, Celine had written, but we protected something the Council feared, the old ways, the unfiltered voice of the moon, and they could not control what they could not understand. Lyra pressed her hand to the page. The words burned into her like truth finally set free. Her mother hadn't been a traitor. She'd been silenced. Further down she found a passage that chilled her more than any spell. If I bear a daughter, she will carry the dormant blood of the First Wolves. She will not show her power until the moon calls her mate. And when she does, the bond will awaken what has slept for centuries. Lyra gasped. That's why the mark hadn't sealed. The power inside her wasn't missing. It was buried, waiting. Footsteps approached. She snapped the book shut and turned to see Cale entering the chamber. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes softened when they met hers. You weren't supposed to be down here, he said, voice quiet. I needed answers, she replied, holding the book close. And I found them. He stepped closer, gaze flicking to the symbol on the cover. The Blackthorn seal, he murmured. I've only seen it in forbidden texts. It's my mother's. She was one of the First Wolves. Kyle's jaw tightened. That bloodline was thought extinct. The Elders buried every record of them after the purge. Lyra's eyes burned. Because they couldn't control them. Just like they can't control me. Cale didn't deny it. Instead, he knelt beside her. This is why the bond fought back. Your wolf wasn't rejecting mine. It was waking up. She looked at him. The truth between them now undeniable. Then why didn't the moon reveal this before? Because timing matters, he said. The moon doesn't just choose mates. She chooses moments. And maybe this is the moment she's been waiting for. Lyra exhaled slowly. They'll come for me now. The Elders won't allow a First Wolf to rise again. Kyle met her gaze with steel in his voice. Then we'll give them something to fear. She reached for his hand. The bond still flickered faintly between them, not yet complete but no longer fading. Something ancient stirred beneath her skin, her bloodline awakening like a wolf rising from slumber. In the silence that followed, the old library felt less like a tomb and more like a vault, not of secrets, but of beginnings. A chill wind swept down from the northern peaks, curling through the high towers of Aldervale, and whispering warnings no one dared speak aloud. The kingdom was uneasy. Whispers of border raids and rebel movement were growing louder, and the once safe mountain stronghold had begun to feel exposed. In the training grounds, Lyra stood across from Queen Mother Era, her palms bruised and dirty. Sweat clung to her skin, her breath heavy, but she didn't stop. You're still too slow, Era said, circling her. A wolf that hesitates is a wolf that dies. Lyra raised her fists again, jaw tight. I'm not hesitating, I'm thinking. Then think faster. They lunged at each other. Ira moved with the precision of a seasoned warrior, striking at Lyra's center. Lyra blocked, twisted, and countered, but not quickly enough. Her back hit the dirt with a thud. Era stepped back. Again. Lyra groaned and sat up, wincing. Do you ever rest? Not when war is coming. Lyra looked up sharply. You believe the rumors. I don't believe in rumors. I believe in patterns. The last time rebels gathered near the Frostfang border, it ended in blood. Ira's gaze softened slightly. That's why I'm training you, because when it comes, you must be more than Cale's claimed. You must be a weapon. Lyra stared down at her hands, remembering the pulse of power that had flared when Kyle touched her. What if I can't control what's inside me? You don't need to control it. You need to understand it. Later that night, as storm clouds gathered, Kyle stood with his generals in the war room, studying maps lined with crimson markers. Their numbers are growing, General Thorne said. Small packs joining under one banner, northern, eastern, even some deserters from the western clans. Cale's gaze remained fixed on the map. And the banner, a silver claw over black, a symbol not seen since the Great Rebellion. The words struck like ice. Cale's hands curled into fists. That sigil was burned from history. Apparently not completely. the general muttered. A knock at the door pulled Kyle from his thoughts. Lyra entered, damp from the rain, wrapped in a dark cloak. The generals fell silent. Kyle nodded for them to leave. When they were alone, he stepped toward her. "You shouldn't be out tonight." "I needed to move," she replied. "The air's too heavy to breathe." He studied her. "You feel it too then, the unrest?" Lyra hesitated. "I think something is pulling at me. Like my wolf knows something before I do. It's anxious. Like she's remembering something I never lived." Kale's jaw tightened. The first wolves carried memory in their blood, lineage that passed not just name, but instinct. She looked at him. "Then what am I remembering?" He was silent for a long moment. "I don't know, but we're out of time to figure it out." Lyra stepped closer, voice steady. "Let me help." "You already are," he said. "But I need more than your presence now. I need your strength. Aldervale may not accept you, but they will fear you if they see what you're becoming." "What are I becoming?" Kale's eyes met hers. "Something the elders tried to erase, and something the rebels will kill to possess or destroy." Lightning cracked across the sky. Lyra felt the tremor not in the air, but in her blood. Outside, wolves began to howl, distant and dissonant, as if announcing the arrival of something ancient. Inside the war room, Lyra whispered, "Then let them come. I'm done hiding." The moon temple stood high above Aldervale, carved into the side of the mountain like the bones of the gods. Only those summoned by the council could walk its stone path, and this time they had summoned Lyra. Snow had begun to fall, coating the temple steps in silence. Lyra climbed without faltering, her breath sharp in the cold, her mind steeled. She had not been called to receive mercy. She had been called to prove herself. Inside the great hall, the elders waited in a crescent circle, cloaked in ceremonial black. Torches crackled along the walls, casting long shadows that danced with the echoes of ancient chants. Kale stood beside them, though his face was unreadable. His position as king bound him to the ritual, but his fists were clenched and his wolf stirred beneath his skin. Elder Marek raised his staff. "Lyra Blackthorn, of disputed blood and denied bond, you stand before the moon and the laws of Aldervale. To silence the chaos your presence has sown, you shall undergo the trial of worthiness." Lyra met his gaze. "What does the trial demand?" "Endurance. Strength, submission, enlightenment. If the moon favors you, she will protect your soul. If not, you'll have your answer," she finished. The elders led her through the temple's inner gate, down into the sacred caverns beneath. It was said that here, where the rock still remembered the howl of the first wolves, the moon's judgment fell most true. She was left alone in the darkness. Then the torches died. At first it was only blackness. Then came the whispers, voices too familiar to be strangers. "You are not one of them," her mother's voice echoed. "You will only bring ruin." Lyra spun, searching for the source. The chamber shifted. Her father appeared bloodied and broken, the ghost of the betrayal they had branded on her soul. "You carry our shame," he said, reaching for her. She staggered back, heart pounding. "You're not real." The shadows laughed. "Neither are you." Pain stabbed through her chest as doubt surged. She fell to her knees, her wolf recoiling. The cave was swallowing her, memory by memory, until even her name felt foreign. But then, one voice cut through. Kyle. His words from days ago returned, low and unwavering. "Then trust what you feel." Her eyes snapped open. She pushed herself to her feet. "I am Lyra Blackthorn. I was born from a bloodline you tried to erase. I have been marked by the Alpha King, and I will not vanish just because you fear what I might become." Light erupted from the stone beneath her feet. A pale silver glow, soft yet unyielding, rose around her like mist. Her wolf surged forward, howling through her veins, awakened by defiance. The illusions shattered, the cave stilled. Torches reignited along the walls. The chamber returned to stillness, but something had changed. The elders stood as she emerged. She was no longer trembling, no longer hidden beneath fear. Her gaze met theirs with quiet fire. Ira stepped forward first. "She passed." Marek's face twisted. "The trial was corrupted by her blood." Kyle's voice rang out. "You asked the moon for her judgment, and she gave it. Deny it now, and you deny the very goddess you serve." A long silence followed. Then, begrudgingly, the elders lowered their heads. Lyra did not smile. She didn't need to. The temple doors opened behind her, the snowfall soft and steady now. as if the mountain had accepted her. Yet even as she stepped into the cold air, she knew this was not the end of her proving. This was only the beginning. The night after the trial, the castle was quieter than usual. Too quiet. The kind of silence that didn't rest but listened. Lyra paced the garden's edge beneath the moonlight, her senses sharp. Every breath of wind seemed to carry a warning she couldn't yet decipher. She had passed the trial of worthiness. The elders had bowed, if only outwardly, but their eyes had not changed. Not really. Footsteps approached. She turned to see Cassian, Cale's most trusted messenger, stepping from the shadows. His cloak was damp from the rain, his face pale. "There's something you need to see," he said quickly. "Come, and bring no one." They moved swiftly through the lower halls of the keep, descending through narrow passageways rarely used. At the end of one corridor, Cassian pressed a hidden lever. A stone door opened, revealing a secret chamber lit by a single torch. Inside was a table covered in scrolls, maps, and coded letters. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" Cassian handed her a scroll. "Intercepted by one of our border patrols this morning. It was meant for the northern rebels." Lyra unrolled it. Her blood ran cold. The seal was unmistakable. Council-grade wax, marked with the sigil of Elder Marek. She scanned the words. Orders. Coordinates. A promise of safe passage through Aldervale's defenses. Marek had been feeding information to the rebels. "This is treason," she whispered. Cassian nodded grimly. "And it gets worse. The scroll mentions you by name." Lyra looked up. "What?" "They know what you are, or what they think you are. Marek promised them your capture in exchange for their loyalty to his leadership after Kyle falls." The room seemed to tilt. "He's bargaining with my life." "Not just yours," Cassian said. "Kyle's too. They plan to strike during the next moon. When the guard is weakest and the court distracted by the renewal rite." Lyra clenched the scroll in her fist. "Does Kyle know?" "Not yet. He's still in council with the Outer Lords. I came to you first because—" He hesitated. "I don't think we can trust everyone on the inside anymore." Lyra's heart pounded. "If Marek's not alone, then this betrayal runs deeper than we thought." They stood in silence, the weight of truth pressing down on them. Finally, Lyra spoke. "We'll need proof, and we need to move before they do." Cassian nodded. "There's more. A courier escaped before the scroll was intercepted. He's likely already reached the rebel lines with word of the trial's outcome, and your survival. So they'll come for me sooner than planned," she murmured. A knock echoed down the hall. Not urgent, but measured, dangerous. Cassian drew his blade. "Hide the scroll." Lyra slipped it beneath the table just as the secret door opened. Elder Varin stepped inside, his expression calm, but his eyes calculating. "Lyra," he said, voice smooth as silk. "We were concerned. You disappeared after your trial." Cassian stepped forward. "She's under the king's protection. You'll speak your concern to him directly." Varin smiled faintly. "Of course. Just ensure she remains close. The kingdom is watching now." He left without another word. Lyra exhaled, steadying herself. "They're tightening the net." Cassian looked at her. "Then we strike before it closes." She nodded, fire building in her chest. "I'll tell Kale. No more secrets." Not from him. As they stepped back into the castle corridors, Lyra knew the days ahead would test more than her strength. They would test her loyalty, her love, and the trust she had begun to place in a bond the moon had not yet finished sealing. But trust, like truth, was about to be tested by fire. The storm had arrived by dawn, its howling winds rattling the windows of the keep. The night had passed in tense silence, but the moment the sun touched the horizon, the kingdom felt the weight of what was coming. Lyra stood at the edge of the balcony, watching the clouds gather like an omen. The air was thick with tension, the kingdom on the brink, and inside the walls whispers of betrayal curling like smoke. Kale had not slept, his mind consumed with the knowledge of Marek's treason. But it was not only Marek he feared. The shadow of the rebellion loomed ever closer. The letter Lyra had seen last night, its contents, the blood oath signed by the rebels and the council, was now a ticking clock. The courier had delivered word, and soon they would all be hunting for her. She turned to see Kale standing in the doorway, his presence like a storm contained. His eyes were dark, his features tight with barely controlled fury. "We need to act now," Lyra said, her voice low but firm. Kale's eyes flashed with the gold of his wolf. "Marek has made his move. He's a coward hiding in the shadows, but it's not him I'm after." Lyra took a step toward him. "You're thinking of the rebels, aren't you? They'll come for you first, They think you're the key to the old bloodline. They'll try to capture you and use you to claim Aldervale." Kyle's voice was cold, calculated, his fists clenched at his sides. "They will never succeed." Lyra's heart pounded. "Then what do we do?" Kyle's gaze turned toward her, his eyes intense with a fire that matched the storm outside. "We strike first. We take control of the situation before it spirals out of our hands. We make sure they know. No one threatens what's mine." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean, what's mine?" Kyle's wolf surged within him, his control slipping as his primal instincts sharpened. He reached for her, his grip firm but tender. "You, Lyra, you are mine, and I will protect you at all costs. I've waited too long for this bond to let it slip through my fingers. You're not just some girl with a cursed bloodline, you're the key to everything. And I will fight for you, even if it costs me the crown." Lyra's pulse quickened at his words, the weight of his declaration settling deep within her. For a moment, she felt the pull of the bond between them, raw, powerful, and undeniable. She had not yet understood the depths of what she was becoming, but with Cale's words she felt the gravity of it all. The door burst open, and General Thorne entered, his face grim. "Your Majesty, we have confirmation. The rebels are massing at the southern border. They'll be here by nightfall." Cale's jaw tightened, his hands trembling with the desire to shift, but he held back just barely. "Prepare the soldiers. We leave at dusk. Make sure the outer defenses are secured. And Lyra," he turned to her, his voice low and fierce, "you stay close to me no matter what happens." She nodded, her own determination hardening within her. This was no longer just about surviving. It was about taking back what was hers, what was theirs. As the storm raged outside, the tension inside the castle reached its breaking point. Lyra could feel the energy shifting in the air, the kingdom holding its breath, awaiting the inevitable. But there was one thing she knew for certain now. This fight was no longer about the throne. It was about the future of their bond, of their kingdom, and of a legacy that would either be destroyed or reborn. She reached for Kyle's hand, feeling the heat of his touch. "We'll win this, Kyle, together." Kyle's eyes softened, his fierce exterior cracking for just a moment. "Together, Lyra, always." And as the storm roared, so did the storm inside them, unseen, but waiting to strike. The full moon hung low over the kingdom, its silver light spilling like liquid over the snow-covered mountains. Inside the castle, preparations for war were underway, but Lyra could not shake the feeling that something far more ancient was stirring within her. The day had come to the eve of battle, and the weight of it pressed on her chest, suffocating her. She stood by the window of her chamber, watching the wind whip the trees into a frenzy. She felt a tug inside her, a pull towards something she could not yet name. The wolf within her stirred, restless, almost desperate. Without thinking, Lyra stepped away from the window, her feet carrying her to the edge of the castle grounds. The night air was sharp, but it did nothing to quell the fire building in her veins. She found herself at the edge of the sacred grove, a place of ancient power where the first wolves had walked, and where the moon itself had once been worshipped. The trees stood tall, their branches twisted in intricate patterns, their roots deep in the earth, as if they were holding the very secrets of the world within them. Lyra could feel the presence of something, someone, watching her. She could not explain it, but the pull grew stronger. She stepped into the grove, her breath catching in her throat as the temperature dropped. The air smelled of pine, earth, and something more, a scent that she recognized, though it was foreign to her. The moonlight seemed to intensify as she walked deeper into the grove, guiding her steps toward a clearing where a single stone altar stood. It was ancient, worn by time, but still standing strong as if it had been waiting for her. She reached the altar and stood before it, her heart pounding in her chest. The wolf within her howled, its power rising like a wave, calling her to something far greater than herself. Lyra closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. She could feel the presence of the first wolves, their spirits lingering in the air. She could hear their whispers, their ancient voices, urging her to embrace what she had been born to be. "You are the key," the voices said. "The blood of the first wolves runs in you. It has always been this way. It is time to awaken the power within you." A surge of energy coursed through her, and Lyra gasped as the power of the moon and the ancient wolves flooded her senses. She fell to her knees, the force of it nearly overwhelming her, but she welcomed it, embracing it as it filled her soul. She opened her eyes and the world seemed to shift around her. The trees, the stones, the very earth beneath her seemed to pulse with life, and for the first time Lyra understood the true power of the bloodline she carried. Her wolf, once timid and unsure, now stood beside her, its form strong and proud. The bond between them was no longer a flicker but a blazing fire, as fierce and unyielding as the moon itself. As the power ebbed away, Lyra stood, her body humming with the ancient energy that now coursed through her veins. She looked up at the full moon, her heart filled with a sense of purpose. She was no longer the girl rejected by the moon. She was the descendant of the first wolves, and the world would tremble before her. From the darkness of the trees, a figure stepped forward, and Lyra turned to face it. Kyle stood there, his golden eyes searching hers. "You've found it," he said, his voice low, filled with awe. "I've found me," she replied, her voice steady, her resolve unshaken. Kyle took a step toward her, his gaze never leaving hers. "The rebellion is coming. Are you ready to fight for what's ours?" Lyra stood tall, her heart steady, her soul awakened. "I've never been more ready." The moon above them blazed brighter than ever, and as they stood together, the storm that had been brewing inside her finally broke. Her power was no longer a threat. It was a promise. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over Aldervale as war drums echoed in the distance. The sound was a grim reminder that the kingdom stood on the edge of annihilation. Rebels, led by the very council who had once guided the land, were marching toward the heart of the kingdom. The air was thick with the tension of impending battle, and every corner of the castle was bracing for the storm that would soon break. Lyra stood with Kale on the battlements, looking down at the forces gathering at the edge of the forest. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her stance was unwavering. The winds tugged at her cloak, and the scent of rain mixed with the smell of the coming bloodshed. "We're outnumbered," Kale said, his voice low, though there was no hint of fear in it. His golden eyes were narrowed, focused. "But we have something they don't." Lyra turned to him, her face set. "We have each other." Kale nodded, but there was a hard edge to his expression. "More than that. We have the power of the first wolves." The words hung between them, a promise and a challenge. Lyra could feel the weight of her bloodline, the dormant strength now coursing through her veins, and it filled her with a quiet resolve. Her bond with Kale was no longer fragile. It was as solid and unyielding as the walls of Aldervale itself. "Let them come," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. "They want to destroy us, but they've forgotten what we are." Kyle's lips curled into a grim smile. "Let's remind them." As the sun sank beneath the mountains, the first wave of rebels appeared on the horizon, their banners of silver claws waving in the wind. They were a disorganized mass, but their numbers were overwhelming. The air was charged with the roar of battle horns as they advanced. Lyra stepped back from the edge of the battlements, her mind whirling. "I need to be in the heart of this, Kyle. I can't sit back and watch." Kyle reached for her, his hand gripping her wrist firmly. "No, you'll stay behind the lines. Your power is still too unpredictable." She pulled her arm free, eyes blazing. "I've proven I can handle it. If we're going to win this war, I can't do it from the sidelines." Kyle's expression softened, but his voice was firm. "You're right, but I need you to stay safe. If something happens to you..." His voice faltered for a brief moment, but his resolve returned swiftly. "Promise me you'll stay behind the defenses. We cannot afford to lose you." Lyra met his gaze, the bond between them pulsing with a fierce energy. She knew, as much as he did, that the stakes had never been higher. But she also knew that their victory wasn't just about brute strength. It was about the power they both carried, the ancient blood that ran through their veins, and the unity between them. "I'll stay behind the lines," she said finally, her voice quiet but resolute. "But only if you promise me one thing." "What?" "That you'll come back. That we'll face whatever comes together." Kale leaned in, his lips brushing her forehead briefly. "I swear it. Together, always." The battle horns grew louder, and the time for words was over. Kale turned and motioned to the soldiers below. "Prepare the defenses. Lyra, stay close to Ira." Lyra watched as Kyle descended the stairs, his figure swallowed by the shadow of the keep. Her heart tightened, but she steadied herself. The weight of the battle was on them all now. With a deep breath, she turned back to face the approaching army. There would be no retreat, no surrender. She had chosen this path, and now there was no turning back. The rebels would come, and they would find out just what it meant to face the fury of the first wolves. The clash of steel rang through the air as the battle raged beneath the blood-red sky. Kyle's warriors stood strong, their swords raised high, but the tide of the war had shifted against them. The rebels fought with relentless fury, spurred on by the promise of taking Aldervale by any means necessary. But Kale would not yield, not while Lyra was still by his side. Lyra stood just behind the front lines, her heart pounding in time with the war drums. The storm had returned, and the battlefield was covered in rain, turning the earth beneath them into a slick, deadly mess. Yet, the power that ran through her veins, her birthright, kept her grounded. She could feel the energy within her pulse, the ancient bloodline calling to her like a beacon. But the rebels weren't the only ones fighting this battle. The demons of doubt and fear swirled in her mind. What if Kale didn't come back? What if the bond they shared wasn't enough to protect them both? She shook the thought from her head. This was their war, and she wouldn't falter now. The war cries grew louder as the enemy pressed forward. Lyra's wolf surged within her, sensing the need for action. She stepped forward, gripping the hilt of her sword, though she knew her strength alone wouldn't win this. "Lyra!" Kyle's voice rang out over the chaos, a beacon in the storm. She turned to see him cutting through the rebels with terrifying precision, his eyes blazing with the golden fire of his wolf. Every swing of his sword was a strike of fate, a reminder of his unyielding resolve. Her heart skipped a beat at the sight, but there was no time for sentiment. She ran toward him, joining the fray with all the power her bloodline could offer. The rebels were caught off guard by her sudden charge, but they quickly regrouped. Lyra's sword clashed against their armor, her strength and skill making her a force to be reckoned with. Kale fought beside her, their movements in sync as if the bond between them had sharpened their senses. Every enemy they struck down seemed to fall before them with ease, but Lyra could feel the growing weight of the battle. She knew they could not keep this pace forever. "Kyle!" she shouted over the din of the battle, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to push them back, now!" Kyle turned to her, his expression fierce. "Follow my lead." With a single command, Kyle surged forward, and Lyra was at his side. They fought their way toward the heart of the enemy forces, their connection undeniable. The moment their enemies saw the strength of their unity, the rebels faltered. They had underestimated the power of the Alpha King and his mate. With every strike, every movement, Lyra felt herself growing stronger, more confident. She had never fought like this before, not with such fire, such purpose. Her wolf, once quiet and uncertain, now roared with power, guiding her every move. The battle was turning. The rebels were retreating, their morale shattered by the sight of the Alpha King and his mate fighting as one. But just as they were on the cusp of victory, a sharp cry echoed through the battlefield. Kyle's sword plunged deep into the heart of an enemy commander, but as he withdrew it, a rebel sniper's arrow found its mark, striking Kyle in the side. Lyra's heart stopped. Kyle staggered back, his golden eyes wide with shock. The wound was deep and the blood stained his armor. "No!" Lyra cried, rushing to his side. Kale's breathing was labored, his grip on his sword weakening. "I'm fine," he muttered, but there was no strength in his words. Lyra could feel the life draining from him and panic surged through her. "No, you're not. You're not fine. You can't leave me." Kale's hand reached for hers, his touch weak but warm. His golden eyes softened. "I'm not going anywhere. Not while you're with me." But Lyra could feel it, the bond between them flickering, the fragile connection wavering. This wasn't just a wound. This was a test. "We're not done yet, Kyle," Lyra whispered, gripping his hand tighter. "We fight together. Always." His lips curled into a faint smile. "Always." With every ounce of strength she had, Lyra pulled Kale into her arms, determined not to let him slip away. She would not lose him. Not now. As the last of the rebels fled into the night, Kale and Lyra stood together, the battlefield silent in the aftermath. They had won, but the cost had been great. Lyra knew their fight was far from over. But for now she had Kale by her side, and together they would face whatever came next. The dawn broke with a strange stillness, the sky painted in hues of orange and violet. The battle had ended, but the air still held the weight of loss and victory. The battlefield was littered with the fallen, both rebel and warrior alike. Aldervale had been spared, but the cost was heavy. Lyra stood at the edge of the castle's highest tower, gazing out over the kingdom. The storm that had raged throughout the night had passed, leaving behind a quiet, tense calm. Her body still hummed with the energy of battle, but it was the quiet aftermath that unsettled her the most. Beside her, Kyle stood with a solemn expression, his once golden armor now marred with blood and dirt. His wound, though grave, had been tended to, but it still drained him. He had insisted on walking, on standing with his people, despite the toll it took on his body. "We've won," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm. "But at what cost?" Kyle turned to her, his golden eyes searching her face. "The cost of survival, the cost of freedom." His voice was low, strained, as if every word took effort. "But it's worth it. We're still standing." Lyra felt a pang of uncertainty, but she didn't voice it. She could feel the weight of the crown pressing on Kyle's shoulders, the weight of leadership. He had taken the rebels down, but the path ahead was still uncertain. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this," Lyra confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything that comes after this." Kyle's gaze softened, and he reached out to gently take her hand. "You're not alone in this, Lyra. We'll face it together." The bond between them had been forged in fire, tested in blood, and it had not wavered. She could feel it now, pulsing through her veins, stronger than ever before. The moon's blessing had not come easily, but it had come. And now, as they stood side by side, she realized just how much they had already been through. "We'll rebuild Aldervale," Kyle said, a quiet determination in his voice. "We'll make it stronger, not just for us, but for everyone who believes in this kingdom." Lyra nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. She had once felt unworthy, broken by the rejection of the moon, but now, standing at Kyle's side, she felt a sense of purpose. She had a place here, by his side, as his queen, as his mate. Together, they would lead. Together, they would protect Aldervale from whatever came next. "The people will need time to heal," Lyra said, her mind turning to the task ahead. "But they'll follow us." "They'll follow you." Kyle's gaze softened and he pulled her closer. "They'll follow us, Lyra, as they always should have." The kingdom was broken, but it was not beyond saving. The wounds of the battle would heal, just as the scars they carried would fade with time. And as the sun rose higher, casting its light over the lands, Lyra knew that they had entered a new chapter. The old ways were gone, but something stronger had taken their place. Together they would face the challenges of rebuilding, of uniting a kingdom torn apart by war. But together they were stronger than they had ever been before. As the morning light bathed them in warmth, Lyra and Kyle stood side by side, watching the first signs of a new dawn. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would face it together. The moon was high when the final bell rang across Aldervale. Its light poured over the kingdom like a benediction, silver and soft, washing away the last traces of blood and sorrow. The battle was over. The traitors had fallen. The kingdom, though bruised, still stood. Lyra walked alone through the sacred grove where her awakening had begun. The trees whispered around her, wind rustling leaves like an ancient hymn. She passed the stone altar once more, her fingertips brushing its surface. This was where everything had changed, where she had found herself, and the strength she had never known she possessed. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned to see Kyle wrapped in a dark cloak, the golden gleam of his eyes brighter beneath the moonlight. His presence, once overwhelming, now felt like home. "You always return here," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "It's where I heard her voice. Not with ears, but with soul." Kyle stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. She took it, their fingers weaving together naturally, unforced. "I heard her too," he murmured. "That night, in you." Silence stretched between them, but it was not empty. It was full of unspoken promises. Then Kyle dropped to one knee, not out of formality or spectacle, but reverence. "I claimed you in defiance of the elders, in the face of a broken tradition. I claimed you not because the moon told me to, but because everything inside me did." Lyra's heart thudded. The wind stilled. He reached into his cloak and withdrew a small carved band of moonstone, etched with ancient markings that shimmered in the light. "But tonight I don't ask the moon for permission. I ask you." He looked up at her. "Lyra Blackthorn, first wolf reborn, alpha by blood and bond, will you rule with me? Not just as my mate, but as the queen this kingdom now needs." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, not from uncertainty, but from the surge of emotion she could no longer hold back. She dropped to her knees before him, their foreheads touching. "Yes," she whispered, "with everything I am." The moment their voices met, The moon above flared brighter just once, then settled into its steady glow, and beneath it, a second mark bloomed on Lyra's skin, shimmering where Cale's first touch had failed weeks before. The true mate mark. Completed not by force but by choice, their wolves howled in unison, not in agony, but in triumph. A sacred bond, blessed at last. Later that night, as they stood before the people of Aldervale, Lyra wore no crown, only the moonstone ring and the weight of legacy on her shoulders. Kyle stood beside her, not in front. Together they addressed the crowd. "The old ways broke us," Lyra said, her voice clear, strong. "They told us who was worthy and who was not. But the moon never asked for silence. She asked for truth." Kyle stepped forward. "We are not the same kingdom we were. We are stronger now. Not because of bloodlines or prophecy, but because we chose to stand, to fight, to love." The people bowed, not from fear, but respect. Later, as the night deepened and the grove emptied, Lyra stood with Kyle once more beneath the moon. She turned to him. "Do you think they'll remember?" Kyle smiled. "They'll remember the girl they called Unworthy, the one who rose anyway, and with the moon above them, the kingdom below, and their hearts finally whole, Lyra knew this was not the end. It was the beginning. And if Lyra's journey moved you, if her fight, her courage, her love spoke to something inside you, subscribe now and don't miss what comes next. Another legend awaits just beyond the moonlight.